Bulging eyes, giant ears, an exaggerated mouth. Was this really made by people in ancient China? Many people call it the alien mask. But today, we are not going to tell an alien story. Actually, the opposite is true. If you only see Sanxingdui as an alien mystery, you may miss something even more shocking. More than 3,000 years ago, in the Sichuan Basin of southwestern China, there was a highly developed bronze civilization, strange, powerful, and almost completely unknown to most people outside China. This was not the China most Americans imagine. Not the Great Wall, not emperors in palaces, not the terracotta army, not the familiar image of dragons, dynasties, and imperial courts. Sanxingdui left behind something very different. Bronze masks, gold face coverings, a massive bronze sacred tree, ivory, jade, and thousands of mysterious objects that were broken, burned, and buried underground. So here's the first question. If these objects were so valuable, why would the people of Sanxingdui destroy them? The answer may be more complicated than treasure. Many artifacts found at Sanxingdui were not placed neatly inside tombs like ordinary burial goods. Some were smashed, some were burned, some were buried together in large pits. That does not look like storage. It does not look like a normal funeral. It looks more like the remains of a huge ritual after it was over. In other words, they may not have been throwing these objects away. They may have been sending them into another world. This is a logic we see in many ancient civilizations. The more precious something is, the more likely it may be offered to gods, ancestors, or supernatural forces. To us, destroying a treasure feels irrational. But to them, destruction may have been the point. A sacred object was not always meant to survive for human eyes. Sometimes it had to be broken, burned, and buried in order to complete its journey. So the strangest thing about Sanxingdui is not simply that they had treasure. It is that they were willing to destroy their treasure with their own hands. But that leads to the next question. If this was a ritual, why did the faces used in these rituals look so inhuman? When you look at a Sanxingdui bronze mask, the first thing you notice is the eyes. They are not normal eyes. They bulge outward, as if they are pushing out from the face. The ears are huge. The mouth is wide. The proportions of the entire face feel almost impossible. If you think this is supposed to be a portrait, then yes, it looks bizarre. But maybe that is the wrong way to look at it. Maybe this face was never meant to copy a human being. Maybe it was meant to go beyond human beings. In a ritual world, a god cannot look too ordinary. An ancestor cannot be just an old man. Power cannot be represented by a plain human face. It has to be enlarged, distorted, made sacred. It has to make the person standing before it feel fear and awe. So when these masks look alien to us, that may be a modern misunderstanding. We are used to explaining strange ancient art through the images we already know from science fiction. Big eyes, strange faces, non-human shapes. So our brain immediately says, alien. But to the people of Sanxingdui, this may not have been the face of an alien. It may have been the face of a god, the face of an ancestor, the face of a being higher than ordinary humans. And that means the most alien-looking part of Sanxingdui may actually be the most human part. Because humans have always done this. We use art to create mystery. We use ritual to create authority. We use exaggerated images to explain a world we cannot fully control. But if these masks represented gods or ancestors, then the next question becomes even bigger. Where did these gods live? Sanxingdui may have left us an answer hidden inside a bronze tree. The bronze sacred tree is one of the most unbelievable objects ever found at Sanxingdui. It is not just decoration. Its trunk rises upward. Its branches spread outward. There are birds on the branches. There are flowers. There are mysterious creatures. From our modern point of view, we might simply say, it is a tree. But to the people who made it, it may have been much more than that. It may have been a map of the universe. It may have connected the earth, the sky, and the world of spirits. It may have represented the movement of the sun. It may have symbolized ancestors, divine birds, or a path between humans and heaven. We cannot say with certainty what every detail meant, but we can say one thing clearly. This was not made just to look beautiful. It was made to turn the universe into something visible, a cosmos cast in bronze. And this is where the story of Sanxingdui changes. It is no longer just a story about strange artifacts. It becomes the story of a complete civilization. Because Sanxingdui did not only have masks, it did not only have gold, it did not only have advanced bronze technology, it had its own spiritual world. The masks show us how they imagined the divine. The bronze tree shows us how they imagined the universe. The ritual pits show us how they tried to communicate with that universe. And that is why Sanxingdui matters so much. Not because it looks strange, but because it proves that ancient China was never just one simple story. When many people think of ancient Chinese civilization, they think of the Yellow River, the Central Plains, the Shang and Zhou dynasties, and later the Qin and Han empires. That picture is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Sanxingdui reminds us that more than 3,000 years ago, far upstream along the Yangtze River, in what is now the Sichuan Basin, there was another complex center of civilization. It was technically advanced, artistically unique, and spiritually powerful. It was not outside Chinese history. It was a lost part of Chinese history, pulled back out of the ground. For American viewers, this is especially important because the image of ancient China is often very narrow. Emperors, dragons, the Great Wall, palaces, and the terracotta warriors. But Sanxingdui suddenly shows us another face of ancient China, a face that is unfamiliar, mysterious, and even a little unsettling. So now comes the next question. If this civilization was so advanced, why does it seem to have disappeared? That is the real cold case of Sanxingdui. Sanxingdui did not leave behind enough clear written records to tell us exactly who they were. We do not know what they called themselves. We do not know exactly why they made these masks. We do not know exactly why they smashed, burned, and buried these objects. We are left with ruins, artifacts, materials, craftsmanship, and cultural traces that may connect to later traditions in the Sichuan region. Maybe the civilization declined. Maybe its people migrated. Maybe its traditions were absorbed by later cultures. Maybe it did not vanish suddenly at all. Maybe it simply continued in another form. But for us today, Sanxingdui feels like a silent witness. It left behind enough evidence to shock us, but not enough explanation to comfort us. And that is exactly why the alien theory became so popular. When modern people see something they cannot easily explain, the simplest answer is often this: aliens. Why are the masks so strange? Aliens. Why is the bronze tree so complex? Aliens. Why does this civilization look so different from the version of ancient China we already know? Aliens again. But that answer is too easy. It hides the real mystery. Because the truly shocking possibility is not that aliens visited ancient China. The truly shocking possibility is that ancient people were fully capable of creating something this strange, this grand, and this spiritually complex all by themselves. They were not primitive people stumbling in darkness, waiting for modern civilization to explain the world to them. They looked up at the sky. They worshiped gods. They organized rituals. They cast enormous bronze objects. They tried to understand death, power, nature, and the universe in their own way. Their answers were simply not the answers we are used to. So the next time you see a Sanxingdui mask, do not rush to ask, was this made by aliens? Ask a more interesting question. More than 3,000 years ago, what kind of people stood between fire, earth, and bronze and created a face like this? Why did they need gods that looked this way? What were they afraid of? What did they believe? Maybe Sanxingdui looks like it came from another world, not because it was truly alien to Earth. Maybe it looks that way because we have forgotten how strange human civilization can be. Sanxingdui is not just a bizarre legend. It is not a footnote in Chinese history. It is a missing piece of the puzzle, dug out of the ground after thousands of years. It reminds us that ancient China was never a single story. There were the dynasties of the Yellow River, and there was the mysterious bronze world of the Sichuan Basin. There was history written in texts, and there was history buried silently in the soil. And Sanxingdui stands in that silence, staring back at us with its bulging bronze eyes from more than 3,000 years ago, almost as if it is asking, do you really understand the past? Or do you only understand the parts of it that happened to survive?